Welcome to ADHD Focus, where we explore what ADHD really means, from diagnosis to real-life solutions and how to navigate it with confidence. This is your guide to understanding ADHD and living well with it. Here's your host, Dr. David Pomeroy.
Hello, this is your host of ADHD Focus, Dr. David Pomeroy. Welcome to another episode. And today we're going to be talking about one of the basic life rhythms that we don't have to think about because it happens in the background, but we need to think about it because it's important. And when it gets out of sync, then that causes problems. This is what's termed the circadian rhythm, and we'll get into more defining that. And my guest, Brooke Erickson, will help us do that and look at how we can, what goes on if it's not lined up, and how we can line it back up again. So, Brooke, wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So Brooke is a functional holistic nutritionist, and she's going to tell you more about her work and how to find out how to get in touch with her.
Yeah, so I have been practicing in private practice for about 10 years now, and my work has really evolved over the years where I've began to see that there's more than just nutrition and exercise to your health. And I became really interested in circadian rhythm once I really started to understand how big of a role that plays in overall health across every single type of thing you could possibly imagine, which we'll kind of talk about. So I've been in private practice. I do a lot with just really focusing on getting to the root cause of imbalances in the body. So from there, helping people who are feeling, inflamed, anxious, out of balance, just not in tune with their body, really getting back to the root and from a foundational level, supporting their body and their wellness so that they can feel their best again. So you can find me, my website is Thrive with Brooke, and I'm also on Instagram. You can find me at thrive_with_Brooke. And yeah. Okay,
great. So circadian rhythm, I think most people have heard of it. And, that's what tells you when you should wake up and when you should go to sleep. And that's about as much as most people figure it. So how do you define it? What does it include?
Yeah. So your circadian rhythm is your sleep-wake cycle. Yes, that's a huge part of it. But there's a lot more to it than just that. So what the two main hormones that regulate that would be cortisol and melatonin. So those are the main levers that change or things that fluctuate throughout the day. So when we wake up in the morning, cortisol is what wakes us up, and that begins to rise and then peaks about 90 minutes after we've been awake. And then it just slowly kind of declines through the day. And then in the evening, melatonin starts to pick up around 8 p.m., 9 p.m., somewhere in there. And that's where we really start to have higher melatonin and low cortisol, and that's what helps us sleep. So
over a day, are there things that either prevent that cortisol from going down or make it spike up or stay up?
Yes. So cortisol is also very commonly known as the stress hormone also, right? So when we're stressed, we release cortisol. So what can happen is you can have other factors, stress throughout our day, that can impact cortisol's release. And so we have what's called a normal rhythm, right, of what it should look like, which is what I just described, where it would, gradually increase in the morning, peak about 90 minutes, and then slowly decline. When we do testing, looking at people's cortisol levels to see if there is some imbalance or dysregulation there, you can see patterns where cortisol is very low in the morning, and then maybe it spikes later in the evening or later in the day. So that is what we're showing as that dysregulation, and that is going to affect things like sleep, things like being able to pay attention and focus, and just overall energy levels throughout the day can be impacted by that. So it's a very complicated system, but the simplicity of it is that We are meant to be aligned with that rhythm through the light and dark cycle of the day. So if you think about before we had electricity, what was that like, right? We would be out, we would rise at sunrise because that would wake us up, and we would be out and doing things all day during the daylight. And then once it starts to get dark out, we would use something like candlelight or fire, right, to be able to see in the evening. So it would be more of those amber tones, right? More of those warm tones that our body then gets a new signal that starts to say, oh, it's starting to get dark out. It's evening. What instructions does the body receive from that light, right? So that begins to then ease us into darkness, which darkness is what signals melatonin production. So those are kind of the two big things. We receive this information through our eyes. One of the main ways we receive it. So through the retina of our eye, we connect to something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is in the hypothalamus of our brain. And that is where our master clock lives. And that master clock is what is syncing up with the light and giving all the instructions to our body about what to do all day long. And it communicates with every single organ in our body, has its own clock. And so those two are communicating. So a good analogy I like to explain for this is, think of your master clock in your brain, kind of like air traffic control at an airport. All your organs are all the planes and all the activity that's going on. And when your circadian rhythm is out of alignment, it's similar to your air traffic control being offline. So imagine an airport trying to coordinate planes taking off and landing with no air traffic control. It would be complete chaos.
Yes. And one side note for anyone reading about this, the suprachiasmatic nucleus gets to be kind of rough to keep on writing, so oftentimes it's abbreviated to SCN.
Yes.
All in caps. And so that's, if you see a reference to that in circadian rhythm, that's what it is.
Yes, much easier to say.
Yes. So certainly from what you're describing and is the way it was before electricity and the way it is now, well after electricity and light bulbs, and now different wavelengths of different light bulbs and LEDs and daylight bulbs and no blue bulbs and red, and the fact that we are under artificial light much longer than darkness comes along. What's the effect of that on the circadian rhythm?
Yeah, so our modern lifestyle is quite different from what I just described. And what that means is that our body is getting mismatched signals throughout the day, right? So, the artificial lights, the LED lights, the blue screens on your computer, on your phone, on your television, your indoor LED lighting, all of that is very disruptive to our circadian rhythm, especially in the evening time when we're meant to have more of that darkness and that amber. So most people, are not going outside enough. We're not getting the full spectrum of the natural light that is the signal that tells our mitochondria what to do. So we're lacking that. We're inside with artificial light and staring at screens. And then in the evening, we're having artificial light, into the evening, and we're disrupting that signal that's trying to tell our body, hey, we need to make melatonin. It's time for bed. So there's a lot of, factors that are impacting that. It's lack of getting the right light signal from outside combined with getting the wrong signal from these different artificial lights and blue screens.
So in terms of getting the light from outside, it sounds like ideally you'd get outside as quickly as you can for at least 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Is that enough?
Yeah. So there's different times during the day that we get different information, right? So if you kind of just think about the light outside, it's literally, you're just syncing up your body to get downloads from the sun. Mm-hmm. Okay, I know what time it is. Oh, okay, I know what I need to be doing right now. So at sunrise, that first window, ideally within 30 minutes of sunrise, we are getting the initial master clock syncing up for the day. So it's getting that first signal that's like, okay, we're checking in. We know what time it is. So that's a really important time. Trying to be out for between 5 and 10 minutes during that time is ideal. If you can't go outside for some reason, if it's the middle of winter and it's freezing, or it's pouring down rain and you have nowhere covered to stand outside, you can go to a window. The glass blocks the signal. So you would need to open the window and sit by a screen. A screen would be okay with the light. Ideally, you want to try to face east in the morning because that's where the sun's coming up. And it's actually the lux, which is the brightness of the light, that is what sends the right signal. So we need a certain level of lux to get the right information. So
is there a bulb or something you can use to substitute for that?
There's not. No, it's not the same. The artificial lights that we've created don't have the same exact signal that we're getting. So you really do want to have the natural light in order to, and like I said, if you can't go outside, that's kind of the best next thing. Sit next to a window, open the window. But ideally you want to go outside for 5 to 10 minutes. There's a second window after that called UVA rise, which is also really, really important. It's actually really important for dopamine production, which relates specifically to ADHD. Yeah. So both of these signals are telling your body that the sunrise is saying, okay, here's how much cortisol we need, right? So it's helping your body make cortisol at the right time, which is when we want that cortisol. It's also kind of helping your body recalibrate. So if your cortisol is really high in the morning, it's going to kind of help regulate it back to a more normal level. And if it's low, it's going to kind of help bring it back up. So it's helping to just recalibrate that first thing in the morning. And then it's also the beginning signaling starts to tell your body how to make dopamine or when to make dopamine. That UVA window is another really important time for that. And dopamine, as we know, is very connected to ADHD. Yeah. So if you're not getting the signal to make dopamine in the morning and it's almost like you top your dopamine tank off in the morning. It goes, oh, okay, let's make everything we need so we can focus and pay attention and have drive and motivation for the day. And if you miss that signal, then what happens with a lot of people is we then chase that with other things. So staring at our phone gives us dopamine. Food gives us dopamine. Sugar gives us dopamine. So we end up chasing dopamine through other means.
Dopamine hits.
Yeah, to get these dopamine hits. So what I would say, just simplify things, especially if this is brand new to you. Just the second you wake up, go outside. First thing you want to do. Just, it doesn't matter what time it is. You just want your first exposure to light, ideally to be outside and the natural light versus looking at your phone or turning lights on inside, things like that. You really want that to try to be as much as you can from the outside.
Okay. And then what's the next in terms of timing for that dopamine production one? Is that any time in the morning or?
Yeah, there's an app there's an app you can download called My Circadian. And it is a really great app that will show you where you live, exactly what time sunrise is. And then it will show the beginning of what's called UVA rise. So it's the UVA window in the morning. That first 30 minutes, again, within UVA rise, you're going to get the strongest signal at that time. So your body's going to recalibrate at the perfect time of the day for you to be able to utilize that throughout the day. So you can look on that app. It's usually about an hour after sunrise, give or take. Sunrise, and all these are going to shift, throughout the year because we've got different seasons and the light cycle changes. So that app is helpful to just stay on top of, okay, I know what time it is when I need to try to be outside.
Okay. And that helps those of us in the Northwest when, it's cloudy out. Oh, it's still cloudy out.
Yeah.
Oh, how about that? It's still cloudy out.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
since clouds don't block the UV or anything else, then it still counts.
Yes. So it's a great point. Even if it is completely cloudy and you can't see the sun, the light wavelengths are still coming through. So you're still getting the signal. You're still receiving that UV signal. What I would say is that sometimes you want to be out a little bit longer. So it's really about the brightness, the lux. And so if it's less bright, then it might take a little bit longer for your body to receive that signal. If it's a clear, sunny day, you could get away with being out there, especially if you've been consistent for 3 minutes, But if it's cloudy, you might want to stay out just a little bit longer, but still important. In fact, I would say through the winter and, fall when it's really, gross outside, it's more important. This is where people end up getting, seasonal affective disorder and things like that. It's a lack of light. It's actually a lack of going outside, and you can correct it even in the winter if you just go outside some more.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, in terms of other things that affect the circadian rhythm, I know by the time people get to be teenagers, then there's what's termed the delayed sleep phase, where how is it that circadian rhythm fits in that?
Yeah. So this to me is a little chicken or the egg. I think that yes, teenagers definitely go through a phase where they're up a little bit later. And is that also a product of our lifestyle and technology and just how things are, right? So, the biggest thing you can do, and I know this is probably the most difficult for most people, is to put away your electronics in the evening. And that will make one of the biggest difference, because what that's doing when you're looking at your phone is you're getting it's blocking melatonin production. It's sending a signal to your body that says, oh, it's still the middle of the day. You should be up. You shouldn't go to bed. It's stimulating dopamine. It's activating us, right?
Mind stimulation, which even if you turn it off, okay, I turned it off before I brush my teeth and get in bed. So that's maybe 6 minutes.
Right. Yeah. And it's probably going to delay melatonin production for at least 45 minutes later, maybe longer for some people in some of the research. So a couple things you can do. You can change the color on your phone to be more orange. You could do it red. It's really hard to read it when it's red, but if you make it more orange, it's not as stimulating. You're not as, they really design the apps and the phones to be really stimulating and engaging to keep you on it, right? And I don't know if you've ever tried to look at your phone when it has a red light on it or a screen, but it's not very fun. It's like you do it because you need to look at something, but it's not going to be very appealing to sit and doom scroll on social media when you have this red light on it, or orange. So that's one way to just kind of slowly start to make it less appealing for your brain, and to kind of, because a lot of people are addicted to the dopamine rush of that. So it's not just putting the phone away. It's actually quite frankly, it's similar to a drug addict, not to be extreme, but it's similar stimulation, right? So you have to wean yourself off of that a little bit so that you can be less addicted. So that's one thing you can do. I would start with an hour before bed. Put away all technology, phone, TV. That will really start to make a big difference to not stimulating and helping your body naturally start to produce more melatonin. There's also blue light blockers, which I really recommend to clients to wear in the evening. Those can be really, really helpful. I have on my website links to some recommended brands. If someone's interested in that, there's, yellow, orange, and red. I would say yellow are more for kind of daytime use if you're staring at a computer for long amounts of time. and then the orange ones block all the blue and the red ones block all the blue and the green. So they kind of are different levels. But that can be something you can start wearing a couple hours before bed or after the sun goes down, and then that can really help too.
And that's where people may notice my glasses have a yellowish tint to it. And I think I've been using them for about a year. When I first put them on, I put them on during the day, looking at a computer screen all day. And I was just amazed at how much less glare there was from the white in the screen. And you know, having an amber, darker, orangey colored screen doesn't work for me all day. But this makes it so much difference just in terms of that glare of all day. And my eyes are much more rested by the end of the day.
Yeah.
So it certainly helps. One other tip that, and it may take some matching of wavelengths, but a very practical psychiatrist down in Oregon, James Phelps, had written a book, which, of course, the title is Why Am I Still Depressed? And he went into the whole light and dark cycles. He said, yeah, there's blue blocking lenses and things, and you can go here and there, or you can go down to your local Harbor Freight or welding store and get some welding glasses, which are a UVEX B something or another, and it's going to do the same thing.
That's funny.
So, of course, you have to find a Harbor Freight or one of those places, but it may be $12 instead of whatever they're marked up to.
Yeah. I know that you can test. There's different ways you can test to see, because if you start looking at this online, you're going to see there's a lot of products out there, and not all of them are high quality. So you want to test it and make sure it's actually blocking the blue light. So you can go online. There's different ways to there's like things that you can look at on a screen that has different colors that will tell you. Another good way is that if you have, which you kind of already have to purchase them to test this, but there's so many blue lights on our different, like your refrigerator and different things in your house. And so if you can see the blue light when you're wearing those, then it's not blocking the blue light. So
how about, and I know there are some light bulbs that are advertised anyway as having no blue.
Yeah. Again, same thing. I would say you want to vet. I have on that same handout that I have, you can download from my website. I have glasses, light bulbs, all different recommendations. One of the easiest things to do, just to start with, is what I did is you can swap out your lamps for incandescent light bulbs. So incandescent light bulbs are kind of the old school light bulbs that we used to have before they made everything energy efficient and LED. So the incandescent are going to be, they have more red in them. They have more full spectrum versus the blue light, or the LEDs, which are really heavy in blue light. And so what I started with was I swapped all my lamps out with incandescents. And so when the sun goes down, I just put those lamps on. I don't do overhead can lights if I can avoid it. And then you can get some other specialty light bulbs that don't have the blue light frequency, that are brighter. So they're meant to be for more daylight, and they have that lux that's still saying, oh, okay, it's the right time of day, but it's in the right ratios. It's more aligned with how nature would be versus a really high blue that's not found in nature, right? So, and then you have three-way bulbs. So you have some where you could there's one lux for the morning, and then one for daytime, and then one for evening. So you can kind of switch it between. You can get red light bulbs. So in my bathroom, I have a little red nightlight. So I just plug that in the evening. And so when I go in to use the restroom or wash my face or do what I need to get ready for bed, I'm not disrupting my whole circadian rhythm with all these lights all of a sudden right before bed. Yeah. So there's lots of different options to support. I would say there's a couple that are just really easy ones you could do, inexpensive. Swapping light bulbs is a great way to start.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, some of the ways you can start to just recreate. Again, just be thinking about, oh, what would the lighting be right now if I didn't have electricity? What would that be like? Is a good way to reference that.
So, sounds like we're looking at the frequency of light, which is what gives you is it red, blue, yellow, whatever, as well as the brightness.
Yes, so it's the lux. The lux is a big part of it. And then it's the different wavelengths of that UV light that have different signals. When it's the middle of the day outside, we have the full spectrum of all the rainbow of all the lights. And so we're meant to be exposed. It's not that blue light is inherently bad. It's just that we're meant to get it at a certain, in combination with all the other colors, not isolated by itself. And it's the isolation of it by itself that's really disruptive.
And so that's where changing the light, the amber on your screen, if you're looking at the computer all day, or wearing these are just blue blocking lenses that are right in the prescription on the glasses.
Yep, you can order them prescribed as well. Yeah. You can also, I think on that handout, I have a phone case that is also blocks blue light that you can put on. And it's actually nice because you can still see on it better than when you just change the color. It's easier to see, but it is blocking it. So that's another option you could try.
Okay. So what are the effects of having our systems not aligned with the natural circadian rhythm? What effects does that have on cortisol, on dopamine, and therefore our clarity of thinking? And how can, the idea being we want to maximize the clarity, keep the stress down, so the cortisol stays down so that we can think more clearly. Because high cortisol levels in the brain, you can't decide to stop cortisol. If you're under stress, that's heading toward the cortisol, what's released with the fight or flight response. And if you're under stress, there's always a little bit of that there, so you've got that edge going. And then that interferes with your thinking and executive function because some of that energy is going toward get ready to move or defend yourself or just try to freeze and blend into the background. So what's the effect of our circadian rhythm? Say you don't get that daylight in the morning and have a cup of coffee and that's breakfast. And then get outside, but you're in the car and then you walk into the office and then it's got glass and you don't have natural light. What's the effect of all that on our systems?
Yeah. So again, that's back to that. What you described is a body running with no air traffic control, right? Or very disrupted air traffic control. And so the perfect storm in the morning is, not going outside in the morning, skipping breakfast, having coffee on an empty stomach. Maybe you go to the gym on top of that and you don't eat your first meal till noon, or you go straight into the office and you don't eat your first meal until noon, right? So that is just a cortisol storm happening in the morning. So like I mentioned, your cortisol is going to peak about 90 minutes, after you're awake in a appropriately functioning body, right? But when you drink coffee on an empty stomach and you miss the signal outside, you're artificially spiking that cortisol even more. And so, and when you don't eat in the morning, which blood sugar regulation is also absolutely essential for people with ADHD. And in fact, I believe that's a different conversation, but it is tied into your meal timing and circadian rhythm as well. And that can be really, really disruptive, right? So when you miss all these things, you're just starting your whole day in this high cortisol, high stress, blood sugar dysregulation, and that's going to send you on a roller coaster all day long. So when your blood sugar is low as well, you're going to crave dopamine. Dopamine is what makes you feel better when your blood sugar's low. So sugar is what raises dopamine. So that can send you on kind of a roller coaster with that. But from a circadian rhythm standpoint, when you eat in the morning, what that does is it stabilizes your cortisol, it stabilizes your blood sugar, and gives it that foundation and that basis so that your body, A, feels safe, because your body needs to feel safety. If it feels, it doesn't know the difference between I'm being chased by a tiger and I didn't eat breakfast and I just drank coffee. Yeah. It literally doesn't know the difference. And then now I just sat in traffic to go to work and I'm just feeling really frazzled. I feel really wired, but tired. You can feel all sorts of things like that. So, eating within an hour of waking and then getting outside and getting that light helps just to affect that. The dopamine piece also, you're missing the signal that tells your body to make dopamine. You're missing the signal that regulates cortisol. So throughout the day, now you've got this, cortisol dysregulation. You probably didn't make enough dopamine at the right time. And so now you're chasing dopamine through food, technology, whatever else is stimulating that for you. And then what happens is that feeds into the evening, right? So the light in the morning also sends a signal for melatonin at night. There's a signal that says, oh, okay, it's morning. I know in 14 hours, I need to start making melatonin for bedtime. Well, if you miss that.
Does everybody have a different time of that 14 hours?
Well, yeah. I mean, everyone's going to be, your rhythm will be a little bit different because it's not, if you took everyone and everyone was perfectly aligned with their circadian rhythm, then that would look more consistent. But we're not all the same, right? So your rhythm is going to be different from another person's just simply by your lifestyle and kind of how you've been living. But in an ideal situation, when you get up first thing at sunrise, because we are aligned with the seasons and the body knows, oh, I know what time of year this is. I know how much light is available during the day. It's going to automatically know, oh, in this amount of hours is roughly when I need to start making melatonin. And then it requires in the evening for the darkness signal to then activate that. Right.
Producing that light.
Yeah.
Many people take melatonin as a way to help them fall asleep. So can that at least partially substitute for, not necessarily that means I can stay on my screens longer, but still to make sure that dopamine production, melatonin production is there by taking 1 milligram.
Yeah, it can be helpful in the transition. It is still a Band-Aid approach, right? It's not fixing the root of what's going on. So what I would say is you could try using it in conjunction with starting to work on circadian rhythm. So you're like, okay, it's going to take a little bit for me to be consistent with this. I'm going to commit to doing that. In the meantime, maybe I'll take a little bit of melatonin to help me with sleep, because getting enough sleep is also going to, help with those ADHD symptoms. So it's kind of this vicious cycle.
Yeah. And I think for me, in terms of patients I see, I didn't know I was going to need to be partly sleep counselor, sleep doctor. But so many people with ADHD, I think for a variety of reasons, circadian rhythms are off, so then sleep gets off because, I'm a night owl. It's nice and quiet, and there's something you want to look at, and what I call the McDonald's time, I deserve a break. So I'm going to take some me time, and then since there's no meds and no alarms, the hyper focus of, I just did this for 2.5 hours and now it's 1 o'clock in the morning and I have to get up at 5:30.
Yeah.
So that cycle is one of the factors that gets in the way.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to one thing in terms of the sugar. You could have breakfast then. If it's Frosted Flakes, you got your dopamine rush and it's gone in about 45 minutes to an hour. Whereas having protein there And protein, yes, protein's important for muscles and bones, but most protein we eat is actually turned into energy, turned into sugar. But that's a metabolic process that takes some time. So there's this even level of blood sugar there, and it's not the spikes up and down. So making sure there is protein beyond a little bit of whatever wheat is actually in the frosted flakes, plus the
Yeah.
milk. Yeah, that's a complete protein, but it's pretty small.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's a great point. Protein is absolutely essential for breakfast. Um, and by what I would call bioavailable protein is ideal,
mhm.
right? Which means it's got all the amino acids. And so that comes from an animal source. Um, so, high amount of protein, depending on the person, I say for an adult, you want to be getting at least 25 to 30 grams. For most people, you might need more. It just depends. And then getting some good healthy fats is also really, really important because protein and fat gives you more sustainable energy. It's going to
Right.
slower digestion, just
That
as you were
slows things
speaking
down.
about, right? When you eat frosted flakes for breakfast, you get a big spike of your blood sugar and you're going to crash. And that spikes your dopamine. And then that crash is where we start to have ADHD symptoms. We can't focus. Our blood sugar just tanked.
Mhm.
And then we're chasing more sugar because our
Yeah.
body, from a survival standpoint, is going to send the
Mhm.
message, sugar will get this up the fastest. Give me more sugar. So,
And the brain, here we're talking about sugar, blood sugar is glucose.
mhm.
The brain consumes most of the glucose that's in the bloodstream, and that's pretty much the main fuel it has to have. Um, so if it doesn't have that, it's not functioning as well. So that's where the signals, the various ones in the brain are, I need more sugar. Um, it's not saying I need more protein so I can have energy in an hour and a half. No,
Mhm.
I want some right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where we get these, have the sugar, and then that feels good because now you have some more dopamine too. And so, as one friend of mine said, yeah, coffee and a maple bar, breakfast of champions. And I said,
Yeah.
no, Steve, you can't count the little bit of whatever in wheat, if there is much in the flour there, and the little bit of cream you put in your coffee. That's not going to give you the complete protein
No.
that's anything.
Not even close. So that's a good way to feel really crummy all day. To
Yeah,
start with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, how does you mentioned the meal timing?
Mhm.
Now, is that partly under the influence of the SCN as far as air traffic control? But then it sounds like it works in the other way too. Having what you have for the meal and when is going to affect dopamine levels, cortisol levels.
Yeah. Yeah. So, again, with the circadian alignment, we're meant to eat when it's light outside. Our digestive enzymes, our hydrochloric acid, all the things that support digestion peak during the day. They peak around midday. So as it starts to get dark, our body is shutting down digestion. It's getting ready for bed. It's winding down for the day. So when
Mhm.
you are eating a lot of foods in the evening, you're less insulin sensitive, so that your blood sugar is going to be higher. It's going to sit in your system and not, uptake into your cells as easy. But also your digestion, you're not going to digest that food as well. You're not using that energy because you're not doing anything anymore for the day,
Mhm.
right? So the meal timing is really important. You're ideally, like, lunch should be your biggest meal of the day, breakfast should be the second biggest, and dinner should be the third, right? We do it very backward, right? A lot of people don't eat breakfast and their biggest meal is at dinner. A lot of people are eating really late. So if you're
Mhm.
eating late, your body, when you're going to bed, is still digesting that food. So again, how does that impact sleep? Your body's going to always prioritize digestion over everything else as far as an energy demanding, where is it putting its energy? So it can't start doing repair and all the things it does while you're sleeping for your brain. That's really important. If you were snacking until midnight and then went to bed at 1, you're missing this window of all the good stuff that goes on with your brain and regeneration in your body. So, meal timing is really important, and really trying to not eat anything. I would say a good 3 hours before bed is a good rule of thumb. And, if you're skipping breakfast, that's a really important first step that I would start with. Even if it's small, even if you can only have 1 egg or 2 eggs to start.
Or a protein shake, and I'm sure that depends on the quality of protein
you have to be careful with protein shakes. The other thing you have to think about is, again, back to our brain. When we chew food, the mechanical digestion of chewing sends signals to our brain. And when you drink something that you didn't chew, we're missing some of that signaling. And especially first thing in the morning, if that's the first thing you have, your digestion's been resting all night. And so it isn't awake. You haven't, the chewing starts to tell the body, oh, food's coming. Let's start, releasing enzymes and hydrochloric acid. So for a lot of people, you drink this protein shake and it's just a big dump in your gut all of a sudden, and your body's like, whoa, what just happened? And so you might not digest that as well. And then obviously quality of protein shakes I see a lot of problems with that as well.
Yeah, you want to balance in there, just because there's a lot of whey protein, and yes, you could say there's a lot of amino acids here.
You got to read the rest of the ingredients.
That's not the same balance as might be in an egg.
Yes. Right.
So there are a number of different factors here. Which are the most important? If you're looking at, okay, I want to change and shift my circadian rhythm, some of these things are going to be really, really difficult to do for me, probably to have something to eat before, at least 3 hours before I go to bed.
Yeah.
That's a real tough one. So what are some of them that would be, which are the most important ones? And it sounds like focusing on the light and dark is a main.
Very important first step. Yes. But you want to think about this. So if you're building a house, your circadian rhythm is like the blueprint for the house. So your nutrition might be all the building materials, and your hydration is part of the building materials. You can have a whole pile of building materials, but if you don't have the blueprint instructions on how to build the house, it's kind of pointless. So the circadian rhythm is the information. It's the instructions on what to do when you take these things in. So you want to start there. And I would say the most simple thing to do, like I mentioned earlier, is get outside as soon as you wake up. If you can make that happen at sunrise or within 30 minutes, great. That's like, A+, gold standard. If you can't, right now you're like, wow, I don't wake up until usually 7 or 8 o'clock or something like that. And obviously sunrise is quite earlier at this time of year. Just get out as soon as you can and try to spend, at least 10 minutes, 20 minutes. That UVA window really likes 20 minutes if you can be out during that time. So that would be the first thing. Just whenever it is that you're getting up, even if you don't sleep in until noon one day, get outside as soon as you wake up. So that would be the first thing I would work on. And then the second really important thing would be the evening. So just bookending that. How do you start your day? How do you end your day? Trying to put that technology away, at least an hour before bed, thinking about what are some easy things I could do to change my light environment in my home, or getting glasses or different things like that. So find something that you're like, I think I can do that. I think I can start with that.
So changing the bulbs would be one thing, and the blue blocking glasses to wear more at night.
And I would say the orange ones are probably good for evening. Red, for a lot of people, I have red. I wear them 2 hours before bed, and I have a lot of clients who have sleep issues that wear those. I can't stay awake. I mean, they literally will put you to bed. So, but you could put the orange ones on earlier in the evening.
Mm,
Because they're not quite blocking as much. When you do the red, it blocks all blue and green. So that's really melatonin sleepy time. So orange can be a good middle ground where you can still see things a little bit easier than the red. And that will still be helping quite a bit with the blue light.
yeah, red can be quite disconcerting. Maybe it's a good way to keep the glasses on, and you'll find that looking at the screen is in your phone is very
It's hard.
exposing.
I don't even like doing it. I can't. I try sometimes if I get a message or something. I'm like, no, I'm just going to have to answer it tomorrow.
So maybe it's easier to have the red glasses, and then that's a distraction from
It
making the
just
screen
depends on the
less.
person. Yeah. I had my mom get some glasses because her and my dad are always up watching TV and she has a lot of sleep issues. And I had her put my red ones on and she's like, I won't use them because I don't even enjoy watching TV with those on. She'll barely wear the orange ones. I've finally got her to wear the orange ones, but I think it can be a bridge. Yes, red light, ideally 2 hours before bed. If you want I always, when I'm working with people, you get people who are type A and they just give me all the answers and all the instructions and I'm just going to go for it. Right.
Yep.
And you get those people. So if you're in that camp, go for the red ones. If you're someone that needs to baby step and ease into things, the orange ones might be a good bridge that's still helping, but not as disruptive maybe, or different than what you're used to.
And the more yellow during the day, I look at that as the benefit to my eyes and just the eye strain and not having that glare of the white. And yeah, it's nice not to have the blue there, I guess. But to me,
Yeah,
that may be a side benefit, but the key is the glare on that.
Yeah, there's a whole other thing about your eyesight and how that impacts your eyesight. And absolutely, if you are someone who literally stares at a computer screen all day, then those yellow ones can be really helpful. Especially, I would say, again, if you're thinking about through the day, if we were outside, what light would be available? And during that brightest kind of 10 to 2 window of the day, we would have more blue light, right? So maybe during 10 to 2 isn't ideally where you would wear the yellow, but then after 2 o'clock or earlier in the morning, that signal should be a little different. And that, especially the afternoon, your eyes are getting tired. That's a really good time, maybe from 2 on to the rest of your workday to wear those.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. So we're looking at the get outside, and even if, okay, maybe that's, for some people, that's going to seem like, are you kidding me? And all right, get some incandescent bulbs.
Yes.
Look for some orange glasses. Do things that cut down your light, and the screens help as far as just the mind stimulation and keep your mind going. And that's where I see a number of people, maybe 20, 30% of people with ADHD, they say, well, I have a hard time falling asleep. My first question is it a hard time falling asleep or is it a hard time getting to bed? So you're able to fall asleep. A lot of times it's the getting to bed. But then once they're in bed, their mind's bouncing around, not being anxious about what didn't get done or what needs to be done, but just pinging all over the place and ideas and things you're thinking of. And that's where, your ADHD medicine isn't there either. And people who say, yeah, I take my stimulant in the morning and my mind calms down. There are only 3 things to think about instead of 48. Well, you can do the same thing at night. And I would say do not do this without discussing it with your doctor and being sure, or your clinician, whoever's helping you with your ADD medications. But 5 milligrams of a stimulant an hour before you go to bed will do the same thing it does in the morning. Calms your mind down. There are fewer stimulation going on in your mind, which makes no sense at all except in the context of some hyperactive factors of ADHD.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think, I always come back to, do you want to manage it with medication, or do you want to work on the root of resolving the underlying cause of things too, right? So I have some other techniques that I use with clients as well, which help people wind down in the evening. So there are things you can do to kind of help with that. So just know there's lots of different options. There's always, everything is information, right? So when you're laying there and your mind is going, that's just information that's telling you that something is out of alignment. There's incongruency with your nervous system, right? This is a lot of nervous system dysregulation. So
things you can do to relax your nervous system, whether it's some breathing exercises or tapping or whatever helps you reduce that stress levels.
Exactly.
And usually not exercise within an hour or two of bedtime, because that's going to rev things up.
Yep, that increases cortisol.
Maybe it's some yoga, maybe just mindfulness.
There's some stretching, some breath work, take a hot bath. Yeah, Epsom salt
bath. One of my favorite things to use to reduce some of the stress in particularly my upper back and lower back, is an S massager, which is just a big S, a little narrow on one side and wide on the other. And there's a somewhat not pointed, but more narrow at the bottom thing, and another on the other end is round. Well, and there's some handles on it, and because of the way that's designed, I can reach everywhere in my back with this thing.
Nice.
Without straining one arm or the other, and go around the back and along each rib. Makes such a difference in terms of just relaxing that tension that's been up there that gets your shoulders up by your ears.
That's great.
And that's an easy way to relax some of that tension, so that it's easier to fall asleep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great tip too. Yeah, anything you could do to relax your body. I have a kind of a body scan exercise. A colleague of mine actually just taught me another really cool exercise at a retreat a couple weeks ago that I'm starting to use. So there's a lot of tools in your toolbox that you can utilize to try to relax your body and just kind of calm your nervous system getting into bed. So
we're relaxing the body. We also want to relax the brain in terms of helping reduce that cortisol load on it, and not have the excitement, I guess, of all the wavelengths of light. And I'm going to look at some summary points here. And I think one of the things you mentioned that to me seemed really important, it gives people a baseline of this is what circadian rhythm looks like as far as where you are in the world and what season it is. And that's the My Circadian app. It sounds like a real helpful.
Yeah, it is really helpful because it helps you kind of track that throughout the year. So, during this time of year where we have long days with a lot of daylight, we're meant to be outside more. We're meant to be awake more. And then as we move into winter, we're actually kind of supposed to hibernate a little bit more. We're supposed to sleep more. It's this period of time with more recovery and rest. And melatonin, in the summertime, we build vitamin D, which we didn't really touch on, but that's really, really important as well. And then in the wintertime, melatonin kind of does what vitamin D does. And they're starting to have a lot of new research coming out showing that people are so fixated on keeping their vitamin D levels over the winter. And really biologically, they're meant to drop down in the winter, and we're meant to really embrace darkness, which makes more melatonin. And that melatonin serves the same purposes in a lot of ways that melatonin does during the summer. So our body is brilliant. We're wired to be acclimated to these day-night cycles. We've been this way forever and ever. So we just have artificial modern things that are disrupting that natural rhythm.
Getting ahead of it. So once again, Brooke Erickson's website is Thrive with Brooke. And on Instagram, that's Thrive_with_Brooke.
Yep.
And Brooke, it's been great to talk with you, and I've really appreciated your wisdom and ideas on circadian rhythm.
Yeah, thank you. This has been so fun. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
And everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of ADHD Focus, and we'll look forward to talking with you soon.
Thank you for listening to this edition of ADHD Focus with Dr. David Pomeroy. This show is not intended to be a recommendation for diagnosis or treatment of any condition for any specific person. Please consult your mental health professional or doctor managing your ADHD or mental health issues about any diagnosis or treatment-related information that you hear on the show. Refer your ADHD provider to this show if he or she would like more information.